There's a certain kind of pain that eats away at a man, not hunger, not exhaustion, but the quiet ache of failing his own child. Matt Coburn felt that ache every single morning as he watched his 16-year-old daughter, Emma, count their remaining grocery money on the cracked kitchen table. Once, he was a respected engineer who built machines that outlasted their owners. Now, after 6 months without a job, he could barely fix his leaking faucet. His pride was gone, his hope thinning with every rejection email. Then came a letter from a law firm, the kind of envelope you assume holds another bill. But inside was something unexpected. Notice that his late Uncle Roy had left him a property on Sycamore Street, a run-down garage that the neighbors called an eyesore and his siblings refused to touch. To everyone else, it was just rust, weeds, and memories of a forgotten man. But for Matt, it was one last chance, not for money, but maybe for purpose. When he and Emma unlocked that dusty gate and peeled back the first rotting tarp, they found not junk, but history, gleaming chrome, faded badges, and 2 mysterious cars that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. And what they'd uncover next would change everything they thought they knew about family, legacy, and redemption. Matt had spent years designing engines on paper, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight beneath those tarps. A flawless 1967 Shelby GT 500 Super Snake, one of only 2 ever made, sitting untouched like a ghost of American muscle. The second was a purple Plymouth Cuda that still smelled faintly of gasoline and dust. His daughter's jaw dropped as she circled them, eyes wide with awe. Patricia Henderson, the attorney handling Roy's estate, nearly lost her professional composure when she realized what they'd found. Uncle Roy, the quiet recluse no one knew much about, had apparently been a collector, and not just any collector, a man who had preserved some of the rarest performance cars ever built. As they lifted more tarps, they found Mustangs, Chargers, and Camaros, each one perfectly maintained, each one a time capsule. Emma's excitement was contagious. For the first time in months, Matt saw light in her eyes again. They weren't just finding cars, they were unearthing pieces of history, each one whispering stories of speed, craftsmanship, and forgotten glory. And for Matt, who had spent so long feeling useless, it felt like fate was offering him one more blueprint, not for machines, but for rebuilding his own life. The deeper they explored, the more questions surfaced. Why had Roy hidden these treasures? What was he planning? The answers came when Emma discovered a false wall in his office, revealing maps, photographs, and blueprints of hand-drawn race circuits labeled with names like Midnight Mile and Devil's Triangle. They weren't official tracks. They were secret routes. Uncle Roy had been part of an underground racing syndicate during the 1970s. A hidden network of engineers and thrill-seekers who pushed cars beyond factory limits under the cover of night. Soon, a neighbor named Frank Martinez, an old mechanic who'd known Roy, arrived and filled in the missing pieces. Roy had worked for Ford in the golden age of muscle cars, building engines that could roar like thunder. When the industry slowed, he kept experimenting in private, helping a community of engineers preserve ideas corporations abandoned. Matt realized his uncle wasn't some eccentric hoarder. He was a visionary, someone who saw value in innovation others left behind. Among the clutter, they found a prototype engine block unlike anything in production, its design decades ahead of its time. Roy had been preserving lost technology, racing it, testing it, and quietly protecting it from extinction. Each new find deepened their awe. Emma uncovered a ledger detailing Roy's acquisitions, every car carefully documented, every modification logged with mathematical precision. He wasn't collecting for profit. He was archiving engineering breakthroughs, preserving automotive DNA that defined generations. Frank confirmed that Roy had been part of an elite circle, men who built, tested, and refined performance engines in secret long after corporations had given up. But Emma saw something else in those notes: opportunity. She told her father that maybe this wasn't just about inheritance, maybe it was about continuing Roy's work. Together they could restore these machines, document their stories, even share them with the world. For the first time in years, Matt saw a path forward that wasn't built on desperation but discovery. He wasn't just fixing engines anymore, he was repairing the bond with his daughter, one car at a time. And as they dusted off the last shelf in Roy's office, they found something that changed everything again: a velvet box containing a golden ring engraved with the letters NVRS, Nevada Racing Syndicate. That ring wasn't jewelry, it was membership. Frank explained that NVRS was no myth. It was a real, secretive organization of elite engineers, racers, and collectors who tested experimental vehicles in the Nevada desert. They weren't criminals. They were innovators who worked beyond corporate limits. And Roy, it seemed, had been one of their most trusted members. Emma's research confirmed it. Calendar entries showed NVRS annual and desert test, while photographs revealed Roy alongside legendary prototypes and test drivers. The more they learned, the clearer it became: Roy wasn't just preserving history, he was creating it. But as they sifted through his files, they noticed another strange pattern. Some of Roy's correspondence wasn't with collectors or racers, but with law enforcement agencies. He'd been helping recover stolen cars, identifying fraud, and authenticating vehicles used in investigations. The quiet uncle the family barely knew had lived a double life: one foot in the world of innovation, the other in justice. When Emma found a hidden key inside the Shelby's glove compartment, it led them to a safety deposit box downtown. Inside, they discovered a folder stamped "Confidential, R. Medina." And in that folder, an FBI letter of gratitude. Uncle Roy had been a federal informant, helping expose international automotive fraud rings that specialized in stealing and forging classic cars. His garage wasn't just a collection, it was a vault of recovered heritage, each vehicle once stolen, restored, and safeguarded. Roy's files revealed decades of collaboration with the Bureau, tracking stolen cars worth millions and training agents on authentication techniques. He had turned his passion for cars into a mission for justice. As Matt read the commendation letters and legal awards transferring ownership of recovered vehicles to Roy as compensation, he understood the true weight of his inheritance. This wasn't just wealth, it was responsibility. The garage wasn't meant to make them rich. It was meant to make them guardians. Days later, Emma discovered something deeply personal: her late mother Sarah's mechanic tools preserved in perfect condition. Alongside them, photographs of Sarah working beside Uncle Roy surfaced, revealing a truth Matt never knew: his wife had shared Roy's passion. They had restored cars together before she fell ill. The realization shattered and healed him at once. The garage wasn't just Roy's legacy, it was Sarah's dream, too. She had planned to open a restoration shop, and Roy had prepared the space for her. Matt and Emma were never supposed to stumble into this life. They were meant to continue it. The past had woven them into this story long before they realized. That night, under the soft hum of garage lights, they made a vow: They would restore every car not to sell but to preserve. It was no longer about survival. It was about redemption, family, and finishing what love and time had started. Weeks later, an FBI agent named Sarah Chen visited, confirming everything. Roy's expertise had been unmatched, and with his death, the Bureau needed help continuing his work. She asked if Matt and Emma would consider stepping into his role, maintaining the reference collection and assisting in future fraud investigations. Matt hesitated, then looked at his daughter, whose eyes held the same spark his wife once had. "We'll do it," he said quietly. Together, they began a new chapter, not as collectors, but as protectors of truth, caretakers of history, and a father-daughter team bound by legacy. As the engines roared to life for the first time in decades, their sound echoed through the garage like the heartbeat of generations. The man who once thought he'd lost everything had found purpose, family, and a mission bigger than himself. And as they closed the garage doors that night, Matt whispered, "Thank you, Roy." Because sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money, it's meaning. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes forgotten dreams can still come back to life. Tomorrow, I'll tell you another story, one that proves hope can hide in the most unexpected places.